First, real quick with the chalk again, on your back pocket, or pockets as appropriate, mark where the dart is on the pocket. Now we're preparing to give the bearer its function. I'm cutting the fly guard's seam allowance down to the waistline stitching so that it can be folded downwards while the rest remains folded upwards. I'm making the cuts 2 centimeters from the outer edge of the bearer and then a bit more than 2 centimeters from the first cut. I iron this 2 centimeter portion of the seam open while the rest is still folded upwards. To prepare the curtain, iron it in half, outside on the outside. Curtains go underneath the slanted pocket bag and over the back pockets. We've chalked the dart, or darts, so you know where you'll put in some pleats. We will start and end on the side seams. Start basting it on underneath the slanted pocket, moving towards the back, basting it to the seam allowance of the waistband. I won't remove this baste, so I need to make sure that it's secure and doesn't go through the waistband fabric for all to see. Or you could baste it and then cross-stitch it like I did in the sample video. I'll leave that to you to decide. When you get to the dart, make a pleat that opens towards the back. Only a couple of centimeters deep will do. Always easiest on a ham, we can iron it to make it a nice clean pleat. At the center back, we can make a double or box pleat. You want to make the pleats only as wide as the inlay, facing each other, and opening on the inside. Iron it and continue the basting, making sure to include a 4th pleat on the other dart, and finishing under the slanted pocket bag. Trim away the curtain so that it finishes at the side seam. From under the forward side of the slanted pocket, on the fly guard side, place a piece of curtain under there. Line the forward edge up to the seam. As we baste it, if there's enough space, we might include a pleat, facing towards the back. But it's very case by case, depending on how big the person is, and by preference of the maker. 99% of the time, I don't think we need to, or I haven't seen one. I move the pocket bag out of the way, only fasten the curtain to the seam allowance, only fastening a few centimeters under the pocket, but you might want to go further. Getting the curtain under the front sides of our front pockets, we need to baste the top of the pocket to the curtain for felling later. Only between the curtain and the pocket. Still don't catch the rest of the trouser. It's important that the two are quite flat together, that they aren't pulling on each other. On the fly side, because we didn't machine down the fly with the waistband, we can place the curtain's edge underneath the fly. Baste it to the waistband's seam allowance and through the waistband canvas if you don't want to cross stitch it. 99% of the time there doesn't need to be a bleed, well, again, depends on the preference of the maker. Baste the fly down onto it, then also baste it to the pocket. I ironed over the inlay of the slanted pocket when I made it, so now we need to baste it to the back trouser inlay and the curtain. We almost need a sleeve board to do this perfectly. With something inside of the trouser like though, we need to make sure that the pocket bag is flat against the trouser, with barely a tiny amount of ease. We can start basting them together from the bottom, basting the pocket only to the trouser inlay, not the trouser leg at all. As we baste upwards, we'll also be basting through the curtain. We can fasten the baste at the top of the curtain, but know that this will be covered when we're ready to take it out, so don't fasten it too strongly. We need to check that we didn't baste it too tightly. Without a sleeve board, we could put our arm through the leg with the side seam on top. We can look at the pocket where we basted it. We're looking to see whether the back trouser inlay is being pulled, whether it's gaping open. This means that the pocket is basted down too tightly since it's pulling the inlay. However, we don't want the opposite to happen either, where the silicea bunches up. We want the two to lay flat together. We can take it out to move and rebaste the silicea until it's right. We need to trim and layer the inlay on the top of the front trouser and the cloth that makes up the slanted pocket. Make certain that the inside of the pocket, mostly facing the side of the silicea that it's attached to, is laying flat inside of the pocket and extends properly into the waistband. We will cross-stitch the pocket to the waistband canvas in much the same way we did the back pocket. It is important that we sew through as much of the pocket as we can so that it is all held together. To line the waistband lining needs to be turned inwards, 1 cm all the way up and down. Mark, or don't bother, the 1 cm across the top and bottom and iron it. Turn a 1 cm in on one side that we'll stick into the hook. With my 2 pieces of lining, we only need to turn in the 1 centimeter at the edge of one piece. The lining has to be tight into the hook. Push the folded edge into the hook and begin to baste a few centimeters before the hook on the lower side of the waistband. Baste up towards the hook. When you get under the hook is when we make sure that they're cozied up together, unfolding the seam allowance there a little if we need to, moving the baste to the top of the waistband and basting on the lining. Given we don't want it to show, leave a few millimeters above the lining to the top of the waistband. As we baste, build in some ease, ensuring that it won't be tight and pull against the waistband, hence make sure it's rolled over your hands with the waistband lining on the outside. When you get to the end, keep it going to the other side of the trouser. This way there's excess stored in the trouser. When you get to the end, keep going onto the other trouser. This way there's excess stored should the trouser need to be let out. The excess only needs to be as much inlay as there is on the waistband. Any more is just useless. Keep the lining going to the opposite side's inlay. Cut it flush with said trouser's inlay. We'll fold over the other piece of waistband to match the inlay so that the fold is on the centre back. If it were one piece, we'd just fold it from the edge of the inlay towards the centre back, and then fold it on the centre back to carry on towards the other side anyway. Baste it towards the bearer. When we get to the fly guard seam, we'll usually baste the waistband lining underneath the bearer's silesia. Angle the lining to lower than its top edge as we get past so that we don't have to think about it showing. That's the complicated bit. Now we baste all along the bottom edge back to where we started. We're going to baste the guard silesia down. I'm cutting away the excess beyond the line we chalked so that we have a healthy seam allowance so that we can still cover our seam, snipping into it at the curve so that I can fold it in a curve. Fold and iron the silesia along the chalk line such that it will hide the undesirable seam from view. We should start from where we unpicked the thread to get the waistband on, firstly clearing out any loose machine threads. We need to fold the silesia along the top inwards, cutting some of it away so that we might only have a centimeter to fold down. We baste it as we go, but we have to make sure that it isn't tight, that we aren't pulling the silesia upwards to get it into position, that we are folding it so that it is level with the waistband. Importantly, without leaving too much extra silesia. We keep the bearer and its silesia quite flat and even together, making sure we hide the raw edges. Baste it across towards the waistband, trying to keep the height level with the waistband lining. We'll start basting towards the bottom of the fly, down the waistband and then the curtain, and then the seams between the front trouser and the bearer. Make sure there's enough ease and the silicea won't pull in the bearer when we connect it to the seam allowance. Again, we want them to sit quite flat together. We're going to set the bottom of the fly bearer now. Do up the zip and such to position the two comfortably together. Fold and iron the silicea that extends below the fly and the bearer together. We only need a couple of centimeters below the two. Cut away the excess silicea slightly beyond where the fly and bearer ends to the effect of being able to fold them up underneath the fly. Baste it down and make sure it looks alright, so that it's ready for finishing. For an angled hem, measure from the fork to the back and front crease if we had a heel and toe inside leg measurement. If we didn't take those, make a horizontal line across the inside leg with the inside leg measurement from the top of the seam. If, like I said earlier, the inside legs don't line up perfectly, then just measure from the midpoint between them. On the front, measure 1 centimeter above that, and on the back, measure 1 centimeter below. Join our two new points. Chalk it onto both sides of the trouser leg. Do the same to the other leg and make sure that they are identical lengths. It's at this point that I'd overlock along the hem, rather than when we first made the legs, because now I know where I want the hemline. And I can cut it down to 5 centimeters past that point. In lieu of an overlocker, we could pinking shear around the edge to inhibit it from fraying. Fold them up inside and baste right along the hem, millimeters from where we folded. Having done, like, at least the first leg, I guess, fold the trouser inside out. Start with the front. It will be tight, so it wants to pull itself into a pleat. We could baste the pleat in place, which we would then fill later. Instead of this though, I think it's better to stretch the hem with steam and water such that it sits flat. This is why we flared the bottom of the trouser. We can unfold the front and place it onto a sleeve board, but it should be very easy to do on a flat surface. Use the weight of the iron and hold one side in place and pull on the other and push the iron around to stretch it. Alternatively, where what you want to stretch, hold one edge and place the iron onto the portion that you want to stretch. Pull on the cloth that you are holding and draw the iron off of the cloth away from your hand. If you can't stretch it enough, trim the stitching down slightly, snipping into the side seam. On the back, there will be extra fabric. Easiest if we place it over a sleeve board. Trust me, it's really difficult without a sleeve board. We want to hold the trouser leg taut so that the cloth that's folded up is quite free to move, given it has plenty of excess. Hold the hem taut so that you know exactly how much extra fabric there is. Holding it taut is much easier when you have a sleeve board, like I said, when you can just pull the front of the trouser downwards from underneath. As you can see, the extra fabric around the hem is being drawn towards the leg as I pull the excess at the centre back. We want to pull the excess tight, but making sure that the trouser leg is being pulled tighter so that they can lay flat together without much excess. Fold it to one side and iron it, giving yourself an isosceles triangle on the back trouser. Start basting the bottom of the triangle and baste up and around. The triangle will be felled and the hem stitched. I'm basting around the leg quite close to the top so that it's easier to stitch later. I'm trying to keep it taut all the way around, and across the front I'm making sure that the ease we stretched isn't trying to pull downwards again, and that any excess I didn't manage to pull out and store in the triangle is evenly distributed and doesn't create any bulk anywhere. I'm going around the hem now and pressing the folded edge properly. Upon a pair of successful hems, because we folded up the hem, we need to create the same center front and center back crease in the now folded up pieces by ironing them. I think we could have guessed. So long as the hem was put up correctly and it's not pulling from the trouser, it'll be sat snug with the leg and we can crease it neatly. We can do this the same way we did the first time, but the first time I didn't have a sleeve board, but I'm repressing the center front crease because I marked stitches telling me where it is. I place my sleeve board onto the center front crease and make sure the trouser is flat underneath before I come in with the iron and press in the center back crease, holding the sleeve board down tight so that it doesn't move. At this point there is an opportunity for a fitting. This particular type of fitting is called a fin bar fin. The trouser is made, we finished making it, but we haven't finished the trouser. We don't want to spend, 2 to 4 hours finishing the trouser to find out it doesn't actually fit. Better to find out now and we can much more easily change the fit. And there will be a video on making a trouser based for a first fitting.